The old bus groaned to a halt at a place that could hardly be called a stop. It was just a wider patch of gravel on a narrow road swallowed by ancient, towering pines. Cora stepped down, her single worn suitcase scraping against the ground, and the bus door hissed shut behind her. The vehicle rumbled away, its red taillights disappearing into the deep green gloom, leaving her in a silence so profound it felt like a physical thing. The air was cold and crisp, smelling of damp earth and pine needles, a stark contrast to the smoky, crowded city she had fled. She was alone. Truly alone. The money in her pocket was a few crumpled bills, barely enough for a meal, and the fear was a constant, cold knot in her stomach. This was her last chance, the final address on a list of possibilities that had grown shorter and more desperate by the day. The ad had been simple, almost oddly so. Live-in help wanted. Room and board provided. Apply in person at the Blackwood estate. No phone number. No email. Just a set of handwritten directions that led her here, to the middle of nowhere. Picking up her suitcase, she started walking. The gravel road twisted and turned, climbing steadily upward. The trees pressed in from both sides, their branches forming a tangled canopy that let in only slivers of the afternoon sun. It felt like walking into a different world, an older one. After what felt like an hour, the trees finally began to thin, and the road ended at a formidable iron gate, rusted but strong, set between two massive stone pillars. Beyond it, at the end of a long, sweeping driveway, stood a house. It wasn't a cozy cottage. It was a lodge built from dark timber and river stone, with a high, sloping roof and a wide porch that wrapped around its front. It looked powerful and lonely, a fortress nestled against the mountainside. The gate was unlocked. Cora pushed it open, the whine of its hinges another sound in the overwhelming quiet. Her shoes crunched on the driveway stones as she approached the main door, a heavy slab of oak with a wrought iron knocker shaped like a wolf's head. Her heart hammered against her ribs. Taking a deep, shaky breath, she lifted the knocker and let it fall. The sound echoed inside, a loud, final thump that seemed to announce her fate. For a long moment nothing happened. Then she heard the heavy thud of a lock turning, and the door swung inward. The man who filled the doorway was so large he blocked the light from inside. He was tall, with broad shoulders that strained against the fabric of his dark shirt. His hair was black as pitch, and his eyes, a startling, fierce blue, scanned her from head to toe in one swift, assessing glance. His expression was hard, unreadable, a mask of stone. Cora felt an instinctual urge to take a step back, a primal fear of a predator. "Can I help you?" His voice was a low rumble like distant thunder. "I'm here about the ad," Cora managed to say, her voice small in the vast space. "The one for the live-in help. My name is Cora." The man's intense gaze didn't waver. He didn't smile. He simply stared, as if he could see every secret, every worry she had ever carried. Just as the silence became unbearable, another figure appeared behind him. This man was just as tall, just as powerfully built, but where the first was all sharp edges and winter frost, this one had warmth in his eyes. His hair was a deep, rich brown, and an easy, charming smile played on his lips as he gently moved his brother aside. "Jett, you're going to scare her half to death standing there like a grumpy sentinel," he said, his voice noticeably warmer and laced with humor. He turned his full attention to Cora and his smile widened. "You must excuse my brother. His manners are a bit rusty. I'm Ronan. You're here about the position? Please come in out of the cold. It's not much, but it's home." He stepped back, gesturing for her to enter. Grateful for the kindness, Cora stepped across the threshold into a massive great room. A vaulted ceiling soared overhead, supported by huge wooden beams. A stone fireplace big enough to stand in dominated one wall, a low fire crackling within, casting dancing shadows on the animal skin rugs and heavy leather furniture. It was masculine and a little untidy, but it had a comfortable, lived-in feel. Jett closed the door, the thud echoing finality. He crossed his arms, his posture still rigid with suspicion. The ad said to apply in person. What? Most people just call. Cora clutched the handle of her suitcase tighter. "I don't have a phone," she said quietly, which was only a partial truth. The full truth was she didn't have a home or a family, or anything left to tie her to a number. Ronan shot Jett a look that clearly said, "Be nice. What my brother means to ask is, what brings you all the way out here? It's a long journey for a job." "I needed a fresh start," Cora said, choosing her words carefully. "A place to stay. I'm a hard worker. I can clean, cook, organize, whatever you need." Jett's eyes narrowed slightly. "It's just the two of us. But we're not ordinary. This isn't an ordinary house. There are things you might see, things you might hear that you won't understand. We require discretion. Absolute loyalty. Before Cora could process his strange words, Ronan interjected smoothly. What my less than tactful brother is trying to say is that we run a private wildlife sanctuary on the extensive grounds. Our work can be unusual and we value our privacy above all else. We need someone who can respect that. Cora nodded slowly. A wildlife sanctuary? It made a strange kind of sense given the remote location. I understand. I have no one to tell. I just want to work. Jett studied her for another long, tense moment. The air in the room seemed to thicken. Cora felt that strange flutter in her stomach again, a mix of fear and something else, something warm and curious. She noticed Jett's nostrils flare almost imperceptibly as if he was scenting the air. A faint look of surprise, quickly masked, flickered in his blue eyes. Ronan, too, seemed to be watching her more intently, his head tilted slightly. It was Ronan who broke the silence. Well, the room is yours if you want it. It's upstairs, third door on the right. We could use the help. And you look like you could use a place to land. The relief that washed over Cora was so powerful her knees felt weak. She had a job. She had a roof. She was safe for now. Thank you, she whispered, her voice thick with emotion. Thank you so much. You won't regret it. Jett gave a single, curt nod. We'll see. Your duties start tomorrow. Ronan will show you to your room. With that, he turned and walked away, his footsteps silent on the thick rug, leaving her with the much more approachable Ronan. Ronan smiled and picked up her suitcase as if it weighed nothing. Don't mind him, he said softly as he led her up a wide wooden staircase. He's got the warmth of a glacier, but he's a good man. He's just protective. Of this place. Of our work. Of his pack. His pack? Cora asked, confused. Ronan's smile didn't slip, but it became a little more careful. A figure of speech. Our family. Our team. You'll understand in time. He stopped at a door and pushed it open. The room inside was simple but clean and warm, with a soft-looking bed, a dresser, and a window that looked out over the darkening forest. Get some rest, Cora. You're home now. He left her alone in the quiet room. Cora sat on the edge of the bed, the events of the day washing over her. The grumpy, intimidating Jett. The charming, kind Ronan. The huge, mysterious house in the woods. It was all so strange. But as she sat there, listening to the absolute silence, she felt it again, that warm, sure feeling, a deep and certain sense that she was exactly where she was meant to be. The first light of dawn was a pale, gray whisper through the trees when Cora awoke. For a single, disorienting moment, she didn't know where she was. The bed was unfamiliar, the room was shrouded in shadows, and the silence was a heavy blanket. Then memory returned, a rush of images. The grumpy man named Jett, the charming one named Ronan, the massive lodge, and the profound relief of having a safe harbor. She had a purpose now. She was the maid of Blackwood estate. She dressed quickly in her simple clothes and crept downstairs. The great room was empty, the fire from the previous night reduced to a bed of glowing embers. The place was immense, and in the cold light of morning, she could see a fine layer of dust on the dark wood surfaces and the animal skulls mounted on the walls. It was a place that needed care. It needed a woman's touch, she thought, and then immediately felt a little silly for the thought. Quietly, she found a broom and a dustpan and began to sweep the main floor, her movements the only sound in the sleeping house. She discovered a large, rustic kitchen with a giant stove and a pantry that was surprisingly well stocked. An idea formed. She would make them breakfast. It was the least she could do. She worked with a quiet efficiency, finding flour, eggs, and milk. Soon, the scent of frying bacon and the warm, comforting aroma of pancakes began to fill the air, driving out the cold, lonely smell of the lodge. She was just setting a stack of pancakes on the large wooden table when she heard the first floorboard creak overhead. A few moments later, Ronan appeared at the bottom of the stairs, dressed in jeans and a flannel shirt, his hair still damp from a shower. He inhaled deeply, a look of genuine pleasure on his face. Well, good morning, he said, his voice warm with sleep. I haven't smelled something that good in, well, ever. Jett burns everything he touches. Cora smiled, a little flush of pride warming her cheeks. I hope it's all right. I want it to be useful. More than all right, Ronan said, pulling out a chair. It's a miracle. A moment later, Jett descended the stairs. He was already dressed in his usual dark, serious clothes, his face its customary mask of sternness. But as he entered the kitchen, his steps slowed. He too inhaled, and for a fraction of a second, Cora saw the hard line of his jaw soften. He didn't say a word, just looked from the food on the table to Cora, and gave a single, almost imperceptible nod before sitting down. The meal was a quiet affair. Ronan did most of the talking, asking Cora gentle questions about her preferences for cleaning supplies and telling her a little about the layout of the house. Jett ate with a focused intensity, his blue eyes occasionally flicking up to watch her. Cora felt that strange sensation again, a warmth spreading through her chest whenever she was near them. It was a feeling of rightness, of calm. She noticed that the brothers, especially Jett, seemed more relaxed at the table than they had the night before. The tense set of Jett's shoulders had eased, and the air in the room felt less charged, more peaceful. After breakfast, the brothers left, mentioning they had sanctuary business to attend to deep in the woods. Cora was alone. She spent the entire day cleaning. She attacked the dust, swept and mopped the wide plank floors, beat the rugs on the porch and organized the cluttered pantry. She found fresh linens and made the beds in the master bedrooms, noticing that the brothers slept in separate, adjoining rooms. The work was hard but satisfying. With every swept corner and every polished surface, she felt like she was not just cleaning a house but making a home. Her home. As the afternoon light began to fade, painting the great room in shades of orange and gold, she started preparing a stew for dinner, letting it simmer on the stove for hours until the meat was tender and the herbs filled the whole lower floor with a rich, savory scent. The brothers returned just as she was setting the table. They both looked tired, their clothes smelling of fresh air and pine and something else, something wild and musky that she couldn't name. Ronan grinned as he came in. "I could get used to this. Coming home to a clean house and a hot meal? Jett, we've been living like animals." Jett didn't reply, but he didn't disagree either. He hung his jacket by the door and his gaze swept over the room, taking in the gleaming surfaces, the organized clutter, the fire she had built back up in the giant hearth. His eyes lingered on Cora, who was nervously stirring the stew. He walked over to the stove, looked into the pot, and for the first time she saw something other than sternness in his eyes. It looked like approval. "Smells adequate," he grunted, and Cora had to hide a smile. From him she sensed that was high praise. They ate dinner together again, and this time the silence was more comfortable. It wasn't the tense quiet of strangers, but the easy quiet of people sharing a space, sharing a meal. Afterward, Ronan helped her wash the dishes while Jett sat by the fire, reading a book, though she noticed his eyes rarely moved across the page. He seemed content just to sit, to be in the room with them. Later that night the weather turned. The wind, which had been a constant whisper in the pines, began to howl around the corners of the lodge. Rain lashed against the windows, and thunder rolled over the mountains, shaking the very foundations of the house. Cora was in her bed, trying to sleep, but each crack of thunder made her jump. She had always been terrified of storms. They made her feel small and helpless, a feeling she knew all too well. The storm was a monster. A tremendous clap of thunder, so loud it was like the sky splitting in two, shook her window panes. Lightning flashed, illuminating her room in a brief, terrifying white light. Cora gasped, pulling the covers over her head, her heart hammering. She was back in that place of fear, alone and vulnerable. A small, frightened whimper escaped her lips. She never heard the door open. The storm was too loud. But suddenly the edge of her mattress dipped on one side, then the other. The weight was familiar, comforting. She slowly lowered the blanket. In the near darkness she could make out two large shapes. Jett was on one side of her, Ronan on the other. Neither spoke. Jett's hand, large and warm, settled on her shoulder. Ronan gently brushed a strand of hair from her damp forehead. "Just a storm, little one," Ronan murmured, his voice a soft rumble beneath the noise of the wind and rain. "It can't get in here." Jett said nothing. He simply pulled the blanket up tighter around her chin, his touch surprisingly gentle. Surrounded by their warmth, their strength and the solid, safe feeling of their presence, Cora's panic began to melt away. The storm raged on, but it seemed farther away now, its power muted by the two powerful men flanking her. Her breathing slowed, matching theirs. The last thing she felt before drifting into a deep, dreamless sleep was the steady, reassuring weight of Jett's hand on her arm and the protective circle of Ronan's body curved toward hers. She had never felt so safe in her entire life. The days at Blackwood Estate settled into a new and comforting rhythm, a pattern woven from simple, shared moments. Mornings began with Cora's cooking, the aromas of coffee and breakfast drawing Jett and Ronan from their rooms. The initial gruffness had not vanished from Jett, but it had been sanded down at the edges. He now offered single-word acknowledgments, coffee, pancakes, that Cora had learned to interpret as his unique form of thanks. Ronan's charm was a constant, filling the great room with easy laughter and questions about her day, his eyes always warm when they landed on her. Cora's presence had become the quiet, steady heartbeat of the lodge. She moved through the rooms not as a stranger, but as a part of the home itself. She learned where the floorboards creaked, which window let in the morning sun, and how to build a fire that would burn for hours. She felt, for the first time in her life, a sense of belonging. The strange, warm feeling that bloomed in her chest whenever the brothers were near had become a constant companion, a quiet hum of contentment. She noticed its effect on them too. Jett's fierce blue eyes would often lose their sharp edge when she entered a room, his broad shoulders relaxing just a fraction. Ronan's smile seemed to come easier, his watchful gaze less tense. The lodge was no longer just a house, it was becoming a home, and she was the center of it. One evening she decided to make a special meal, a roast with herbs and vegetables from the garden she had discovered behind the house. She was focused, humming softly to herself as she chopped carrots and potatoes on the heavy wooden cutting board. The knife was sharp, a fact she appreciated until a moment of distraction. Her hand slipped, and the blade bit deep into the pad of her thumb. A sharp gasp escaped her lips as a bright, searing pain shot up her hand. A single, perfect drop of crimson blood welled up and fell, splashing onto the pale wood of the cutting board. The scent hit the air. It was not just the metallic tang of blood. It was something else, something layered beneath it, sweet and potent like wild honey and rare blossoms in the cleanest mountain air. It was a scent that spoke of peace and warmth and home, a scent that was utterly and uniquely Cora. In the adjoining great room the change was instantaneous and violent. Jett, who had been reading by the fire, shot to his feet so fast his book clattered to the floor. A low, guttural growl rumbled in his chest, a sound that was not entirely human. His eyes, when they snapped toward the kitchen, glowed with a feral, molten gold. Across the room Ronan, who had been polishing a hunting rifle, froze. His head jerked up, his own eyes flashing with the same uncanny light. His nostrils flared, drinking in the scent that called to something ancient and primal deep within him. The air in the lodge, once calm, was now crackling with a raw, predatory energy. Cora, clutching her bleeding thumb, looked up and saw them. She saw Jett's transformed face, the animalistic gold of his eyes, the sheer power radiating from him in waves. She saw the same wildness reflected in Ronan's usually gentle gaze. Fear, cold and sharp, lanced through her. The peaceful fantasy shattered. They weren't just men. They were something else, something dangerous. Her mind screamed that she had been a fool, that she had walked into a predator's den and mistaken it for a sanctuary. Her blood had triggered them. Terror seized her. She stumbled back from the counter, her heart hammering against her ribs like a trapped bird. "I'm sorry," she stammered, her voice trembling. "I'm so sorry, I'll clean it up, I didn't mean to." She turned to flee, to run to her room and lock the door, to hide from the terrifying creatures in the other room. "Cora, wait." Ronan's voice was strained, a mix of that animalistic growl and desperate urgency. He moved, not with a human's gait, but with a predator's blinding speed, appearing in the kitchen doorway before she could take 2 steps. He didn't grab her, but his presence blocked her escape. "Don't," Jett's voice commanded from behind her. It was deeper than she had ever heard it, vibrating with that same low growl, but it was not angry. It was intense, overwhelmed. She flinched, freezing in place, trapped between them. She squeezed her eyes shut, waiting for, she didn't know what. But no attack came. Instead she heard Jett take a slow, deliberate step closer. She could feel the heat of his body. "Look at me, Cora," he said, and the command was softened by something she had never heard in his voice before, awe. Trembling, she forced her eyes open. Both men were looking at her, their eyes still glowing, but the feral sharpness had been replaced by an expression of such profound wonder that it stole her breath. Ronan's face was filled with a tenderness that made her want to cry. Jett reached out, his movements slow and careful, as if approaching a skittish deer. He didn't touch her cut. Instead, his fingers, so surprisingly gentle, brushed against her wrist. "Your blood," he said, his voice a rough whisper. "You're set. You feel it, don't you? The calm when you are near. The rightness." Ronan took a step closer, completing the circle around her. "We should have told you," he said, his voice returning to its normal timbre, though laced with emotion. We hoped we were wrong. But we're not. Cora, you're not just a human girl who needed a job." Jett's glowing blue-gold eyes held hers captive. "The wildlife sanctuary, it was a story. A half-truth. We are shifters. Werewolves. And we are the alphas of this territory." He said it not as a threat but as a simple, staggering fact. Ronan nodded, his gaze soft. "And you," Your scent, the peace you bring to us, the way our wolves settle when you are near. It's because you are an Omega. The rarest kind of shifter. A true Omega. You are a gift, Cora. You are peace and warmth and home for wolves like us. Especially for alphas who carry the weight of leading a pack. The words washed over her, unbelievable, impossible. Werewolves. Alphas. Omegas. It was the stuff of fairy tales. But looking into their eyes, feeling the raw, honest truth emanating from them, feeling the strange rightness that had drawn her to this place, she knew it was real. The fear began to recede, not all at once, but slowly replaced by a dawning, incredible understanding. Jett's hand was still on her wrist, his thumb stroking her skin. We want you to stay, he said, and the words were a vow. Not as our maid. Never again as our maid. Ronan finished the thought, his voice filled with a love so fierce it made her heart ache. We want you to stay as ours. The silence in the kitchen was profound, broken only by the crackle of the fire in the next room and the frantic beating of Cora's own heart. The words hung in the air between them, shimmering and impossible. Werewolves. Alphas. Omega. They were concepts from a storybook, myths whispered to frighten children. Yet, as she stood there, trapped in the circle of their overwhelming presence, feeling the raw, untamed power that radiated from them, she knew with a certainty that went deeper than logic or reason that every unbelievable word was true. The strange calm she felt around them, the way their gruffness had softened, the protective way they had surrounded her during the storm, it all clicked into a terrifying, magnificent picture. Her fear, which had been a cold, sharp knife in her gut, began to thaw. It didn't vanish, but it melted under the heat of the awe in their eyes. They were looking at her not as a meal, not as an intruder, but as if she were something precious and miraculous. Jett's hand was still on her wrist, his thumb making slow, calming circles on her skin. The gesture was so at odds with his usual sternness that it made her breath catch. Ronan's gaze was unwavering, filled with a tenderness that promised safety, not harm. I don't understand, she whispered, her voice barely audible. An Omega? But I'm just me. That's all you need to be, Ronan said softly, taking a careful step closer. Just you. Your very nature is a balm to our kind. To us. Our wolves? They are always restless, always on guard, always fighting for dominance. It is the burden of being an alpha. But you quiet the storm inside us, Cora. You make the constant noise just stop. Jett gave a single, grave nod, his glowing eyes never leaving hers. When you walked in that door, it was like a missing piece of the world had clicked into place. My wolf, which trusts no one, knew you instantly. It knew your scent was home. He finally released her wrist, but only to gently take her injured hand. He examined the cut on her thumb, his touch feather-light. This blood, he murmured, it calls to us. Not to harm. To protect. To cherish. Above all else. The last of Cora's resistance crumbled. The warmth that had been a quiet hum in her chest now bloomed into a brilliant, undeniable sun. Was love. It was a connection so profound and so natural that it felt like remembering something she had always known. She looked from Jett's fiercely devoted face to Ronan's lovingly open one, and she knew her answer. I feel it too, she confessed, her voice gaining strength. The rightness. I thought it was just gratitude for a roof over my head, but it's so much more. When I'm with you, I'm not scared anymore. I'm not alone. She took a deep breath, her heart swelling until she thought it might burst. I don't fully understand what it means to be an Omega, but I want to. I want to stay. Not as a maid. But, as yours. The effect of her words was instantaneous. A tension she hadn't even realized was there drained from Jett's powerful frame. A brilliant, breathtaking smile broke across Ronan's face, a sight so full of joy it was like seeing the sun for the first time. In that moment, any lingering doubt was incinerated in the forge of their shared happiness. The dynamic in the house shifted completely from that moment on. Cora's simple room remained, but she rarely slept there. Her nights were spent nestled between the two alphas in their large bed, surrounded by their warmth and strength. The touches that had been fleeting became constant and deliberate. A brush of Jett's hand against her back as he passed her in the hall. Ronan tucking a stray strand of hair behind her ear as they sat by the fire. The kisses started slowly, a soft, grateful press of Ronan's lips to her forehead, a surprisingly tender kiss from Jett on the back of her hand. But soon the kisses grew longer, deeper, filled with a passion that spoke of a love that was both fiercely protective and deeply, passionately romantic. One evening, under a sky ablaze with a million stars, they led her out onto the back porch. The air was cool, but she was warm between them. Ronan stood on one side, Jett on the other. They didn't need to say the words, she could feel the love radiating from them, a tangible force in the night air. It was a mature, all-consuming love, a bond that had been forged in secrecy and had blossomed in the safety of their shared truth. They were three parts of a single whole, a trinity of souls finally united. Jett turned to her, his blue eyes serious in the moonlight. "The pack will need to meet you," he said, his voice a low rumble. "They need to know their Luna." Ronan squeezed her hand. "Our queen," he clarified, his voice full of pride. "The heart of our pack. Our equal in every way." Cora's heart soared. She was no longer a scared girl running from her past. She was Cora the Omega. She was loved by two powerful alphas. She was home. She looked up at the endless starry sky, then at the two magnificent men who had given her everything, and she knew this was only the beginning of their forever. And if you've been swept away by the story of Cora, Jett, and Ronan, if you felt the warmth of their bond and the strength of their unique love, then you won't want to miss what happens next. Their story is just beginning. To ensure you never miss a chapter of this ongoing tale of love, protection, and destiny, make sure to subscribe to the channel. Join our pack, and be the first to know when new stories of the Blackwood Alphas and their beloved Omega continue. Subscribe now.